And I guess just for starters, Tyler, why don't you tell us how you guys first learned about the moose with the rope wrapped around its antlers?
Sure. So it had been reported, it's been about a week and a half, give or take now. Initially, Forest Service reported it through their, excuse me, the American Land and Leisure folks had got it to them. And so they emailed us like, hey, this is what happened. This is the day that the moose actually got wrapped in the rope. And so from there, nobody had really seen it, knew where it went. And so we didn't make a huge concerted effort right at first to try to find it. Within a few days, folks were seeing it more regularly, had kind of a place to start. And so we made several trips up to the Brainard Lake area to try to find it. Unfortunately, several efforts in, we weren't able to find it. I think 3 different days worth that we went up there to try to find it. It had moved on, wasn't visible, whatever the case may be. Several reports kind of came in late to us this last week. I believe Tuesday and Wednesday, and then also Thursday it was seen. It wasn't reported to us until Thursday, in which case we made a big effort to go up yesterday on Friday. So we had several guys, I was not one of them, that went up in the morning, spent several hours. They came out around noon and they were up there at first light. So I spent the first half of the day looking for this guy and couldn't find him. So me, just kind of on a whim, I decided to go up in the afternoon, just see if I could find a hiker somewhere that had seen him. And so as people are coming down in the afternoon off the trail, I was going up and just talk to people on the way up. And fortunately, I happened to talk to a young gal that had seen him and was able to pull out a map, show me exactly where she had seen it. Really good site description. And so I was almost able to walk right up to where she had seen him, and he was still there, bedded down. And so from there on out, had one attempt to try to immobilize him with the tranquilizer dart. I missed. And so given that I had eyes on him, surprisingly, I had cell service up there because the radios weren't working. And so I was able to call out, and one of my coworkers, Ben Gallowich, he was able to come up, bring extra darts and drug, and we were able, just at last light, to get a dart deployed, a good hit. And then it took a little longer than it normally does, but the moose finally went down. And within a couple minutes, we had all the rope off and had the reversal drug administered. And so within a couple minutes after that, the moose was up. And I don't know if you guys have access, but we were able to video him getting up and crashing through the willows. So right back where he started before any of this incident began. So.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. Then if anyone has questions, go ahead and raise your hand and call you out or put it in the chat function. All right, Blair, go ahead.
So Tyler, was there any speculation on how the moose got the rope tangled up in him? And secondly, with something like that, how long does it take for that moose to go down, and how long does it take for the moose to get back up, I guess, once the reversal drug's administered?
Sure. So 2 parts of that. So the way the moose came to have the rope to start with, it was actually a bear hang, somebody hanging their food up above, in a tree out of reach of the bears. That was the rope they were using to keep the food away from the bears. And then, of course, while you're trying to do one, responsible aspect of being near wildlife, the moose came around and proceeded to wrap the entire 50 feet of climbing rope around his antlers. So that's how he came to get the rope to start with. And then as far as the tranquilizer that we use, after deployment, it varies, but usually it's about 10 minutes for most animals. Dosing can be a little bit finicky, but within reason, 10 to 15 minutes usually. This moose took almost 30. I don't know what to attribute that to, whether it was a dosing thing or just how big a moose is. It took a little longer to circulate through his system. Then after they go down, usually we have about 2 hours to work with that they will stay subdued until their body actually metabolizes the drug and they come out on their own. But like I said, in this case, it took us 5 minutes to get everything off of his antlers and have him ready to go again. So once we administer that reversal drug, it's kind of the same process. It's usually 10 to 15 minutes. And luckily the reversal was much faster than the initial drug to subdue him in this case, which was good news for us.
Next question.
Happy to ask another one.
Go for it, Blair.
All right. How often do CPW rangers or yourself, have you ever dealt with something like this before?
So district wildlife manager. So we're not quite park rangers. We work closely with our park ranger counterparts, but a little bit of a division within the agency, different job title. But outside of that, as far as the moose getting tangled, I personally, this is only the second one I've dealt with, but it's not uncommon in the mountain communities, especially. Moose have a habit, of getting tangled in anything from ropes to hammocks to clotheslines, kind of you name it. If it's some type of rope or string, when they get tangled in it. And it's not just moose, elk and deer can do it as well, but I guarantee you at least once a year somewhere in Colorado, we are cutting a moose out of something that has gotten tangled in.
Tyler, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about the moose's condition, the fact that it was ear tagged, what you know about the tags, and a little bit about its size.
Sure. So we're kind of chronologically through that. So this moose was previously tagged. We looked up the data, and it was in 2014. This moose was originally relocated out of the city of Boulder. I don't have any more specifics on the detail other than the date. And so he's at least 6 years old, probably 7 if he was at least a yearling at that time. So a little bit of a middle to older age class for a moose. And so as far as physical size, somewhere between that 1,000 and 1,200 pound range. Definitely a really good sized moose, really good body condition on him. Part of why we weren't as concerned initially with the rope. Stuff gets tangled in animals' antlers all the time. What we're looking for is, is it affecting the way they can move, the way they can breathe, and the way they can eat? And so initially this moose didn't show any signs of any issue. He just had stuff tangled in his antlers, no negative side effects from that. But as it progressed and he moved around, and I'm sure, the rope got snagged and stuff, looked like he had one that was trailing behind him a ways. I'm sure it got caught in things. And so there's actually a single strand that was going underneath his chin. I think that was slowly tightening, so that when we actually were able to take the rope off last night, he had kind of rope burns essentially that were starting to wear their way in. I think given enough time, it could have been a more serious problem. But once we found that out this past week, that also aided in our decision to kind of ramp up our efforts, try to get this rope taken off before anything bad could happen.
Can I ask something real quick?
Please do.
I would imagine, Tyler, with a regular, moose, you got to be cautious in approaching them. But this one, I would imagine, is a little more agitated considering all the rope around its antlers. So what kind of precautions did you all have to take because of that?
So with any wildlife encounter, not necessarily just moose, but we're always trying to keep, if we can, something between us, right? A physical barrier. It gets tough, and moose are one. I would probably, of any animal in Colorado, I would say moose require the most caution, but probably get the least from people. They look big and lumbering and kind of teddy bearish in that sense. And so people feel comfortable getting close to them, not realizing how fast a moose can actually move, if he decides to charge you, and by then it's too late. And so with this guy, when I initially tried to dart him, I was actually up on a boulder above him, knowing that if he stood up and tried to charge, I had that physical barrier there. When we got to last light, it wasn't much. There was a pond between us, not a very big one, but it was some type of physical barrier that would change his movement if he did decide to come back at us. After I deployed the darts, he initially ran away a little bit, but then kind of turned around ready to fight and actually came back towards us. Not in the sense of like trying to charge us, but I think partly just trying to attribute what exactly we were, fading light, couldn't see very well. All he knew is he got stuck with something and it hurt a little bit. And so kind of looking to defend himself if he needed to was kind of more the sense I got from his behavior. But always, when we were approaching these animals, it's tough because as they start to go down, it's not like an instant collapse. This animal just falls down and he's out cold. It's kind of a slow progression from I'm fine to I'm a little woozy to I'm losing my balance to I finally lay down. And so not knowing, is he completely down or is he just almost there? We kind of have to be slow and cautious when we're approaching those animals to make sure that they're not going to jump up as we try to get close so we can do our work. But luckily, because of the light situation that we had on the trail, I had hung a headlamp. And so I went back to get that to have an extra light for our situation. And the amount of time it took me to go get that, as we were pushing that 30-minute mark that he was been up. As soon as I got back with that light, we shone a light back on where he was. No moose visible, so eased into where we'd last seen him, and he was right there. He had laid down and was out. So from there, we started moving in and cutting the rope.
Hey, Tyler, I saw the photo on Twitter with your foot in the foreground, looking down on the moose. Was that where you did the first shot?
No, so that was probably an hour and a half afterwards. At that point, I had made contact with, coworkers down below, and they were en route to help me out. And thank goodness they did. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do the work last night. But so part of why my foot was in that picture was I was trying to provide some reference. Without something in the foreground, it makes him look a lot farther away than he was. But so that was just where I was sitting and just keeping an eye on him, not too close, but close enough that if he went anywhere, I had a good idea of where to go to follow him so we could keep eyes until we were able to make that second attempt to immobilize.
And I think you or you or Jason wrote that was near Pawnee Peak. What little body of water is there, or did he come down lower into the shrubbery and decide to take his nap?
So he was above Lake Isabel. There's lots of small, and I think some of them are kind of ephemeral ponds. And so I don't know that they have any names. If they do, they're unknown to me. And so just up the trail, as you go up the Pawnee Pass Trail from Lake Isabel, a certain distance up, he was just down by one of those ponds. That's, pretty short distance off the trail.
And did the young lady that you talked to who had the map, did she know this was the roped moose, or did she say, no, I just seen a moose? No,
she knew it was the one, because when I asked her, I was asking folks, had they seen a moose to start with? Any moose sightings today? And then I would follow up if they had seen moose, was it the one with the rope and its antlers? And so I asked her, did you see any moose today? She says, yeah, actually, I was going to reach out to you guys and see and report this. And I mean, as soon as she said that, I knew that we were dealing with the right moose. And she went on to describe that it had the rope in its antlers. And it was just kind of an opportunistic or a good luck on my part of asking the right person. And she was the only one I talked to, of the 50 or so people that were coming down off the trail that had actually seen him. So it was meant to be, I guess, in that sense, that she'd seen it, and it was a good opportunity that I stopped and talked to her. So.
And did you have any reports from people or hikers up there or campers who were missing a climbing rope in their dinner?
No, so we'd already known the source of that climbing rope, and so nobody's reporting it missing since it had already been reported pretty much the day that it happened. So that was all accounted for.
Oh, did it happen in the Lake Isabel area where he took it down?
I think it was closer to the main lake at Brainard Lake. I don't know that 100% off the top of my head. I'd have to look up, but it was reported to us the day that it happened that, hey, here's what happened, just so that you're aware, through the Forest Service. So we were in the loop in that sense. But then after that first day when it happened, nobody saw it for several days. At least if they did, it wasn't reported to us. So, but in any case, that was about, like I said, week and a half ago.
Okay, I was going to ask about the date that might have happened. So he had that thing on his head for maybe 10 days.
Roughly there, yeah.
No more questions, You're on.
Blair, Foster, Laura, any questions?
Yeah, I had one more. We've seen some more wildlife encounters between humans and wildlife recently. And, obviously people get very interested when they see things like this and want to do everything they can to help. What do you just tell the general public, especially as we get close to the rut here, just about interacting with not just moose, but elk and deer and bear and all of those as we get closer to the fall season here?
Yeah, so, with instances like this where it's, an entanglement or some other, we'll call it pressing issue, not just I saw XYZ animal, at this place, if it's got, something tangled at its antlers, if it's caught in something, we can't do anything, with instances that we don't know about. So reporting is going to be key in a timely manner. That was something we dealt with. Up there at Brainard, for example, the folks that manage the campground that people are reporting it to, it takes a while for them to get it reported to us. Meanwhile, a lot of those same hikers are coming home down, into cell service and aren't reporting it for at least, a day or so. And that doesn't help us. So one, timely reporting is key. As far as just general, being around wildlife, Estes Park elk, etc., keep your distance. These animals, they may seem calm and tame, but they're wildlife. There's a reason we call them that. And at the snap of a finger, they can change their behavior when, whatever that magical line is in their mind that this is too close, you need to back up. And so the farther you can stay back, we want everybody to enjoy and view wildlife, but keeping a safe distance. So you always see videos of people trying to get selfies, things of that nature. That's not a good responsible behavior for people to have, around wildlife, because that, if that animal turns and charges them or they get hurt because of that, well, it's kind of, they're causing, the confrontation to start with. And then, the animal ultimately is the one that loses in that sense. So keeping your distance, like you mentioned, the rut is coming up. And so different elk and moose will be the first here into September, first part of October. And so bulls, especially, they're going to be a little more aggressive. They're flaunting their stuff for the ladies. And if it's a smaller bull that they're trying to fight off, or if it's a person that's just too close, they're seeing red. And so you don't want to be in that, whatever. Like I said, there's no good distance. I would say if you can stay at least 100 yards away, that would be a good starting point. Because anything inside that, for whatever reason, they can decide to turn and charge, and they're doing it just because that they're on the fight. That's what they're doing that time of year. And so it doesn't matter if it's an enemy as far as another competing bull or just a person that's too close. So keeping distance, being aware of that. Like I was talking earlier, keeping something between you and them is always a good idea, just so that if something does happen, you have that little bit of defense, a car, a tree, a rock, whatever it is. Kind of protect yourself a little bit, and in turn that will then protect the animals. You don't get too close. You have that physical barrier. You won't get hurt. That animal doesn't have a chance to hurt a person, and then we don't have to worry about trying to track that animal and taking action afterwards.
Great. Well, if everybody has what they need as far as sound, we'll let Tyler go. And Tyler, we thank you for joining us and for your insight and your time.
Yeah, you're very welcome, guys.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Tyler.
everybody.
Thanks, Jason, too.
Thank you.